Welcome to Get the Facts, the show that gives you information on the latest topics. We're now in Workers' Week. This began last Friday, May 17, and will culminate with Labor Day next Thursday, May 23. Now, if you don't know, Workers' Week is one of our annual observances and one with deep-rooted significance in our history. It arose from the 1938 riots, which led to the establishment of labor standards, of which we all benefit from today. The theme for this year's observance is recognizing abilities, fostering greater inclusion of our workers. To speak about this significant observance and the activities involved, I am joined by the Divisional Director of Industrial Relations and Allied Services in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Gillian Carrodus. Welcome to Get the Facts, Lady Carrodus.
Thank you very much, and it's certainly a pleasure this Workers' Week to sit here with you and your listeners.
All right, so this Workers' Week. Now, can you tell us a bit about Workers' Week? What is it?
Yeah, so Workers' Week is celebrated each year in the third week of May.
Okay.
And you might ask, why May?
Please.
Well, internationally, you hear about May Day, when they had their different demonstrations in relation to the rights of workers, decent work, we call it now,
Right.
in Jamaica. As far back as the 1937, 1938, the workers in Jamaica were very adamant that they wanted certain minimum standards in relation to wages, in relation to their conditions of work.
Right.
And we recall in the sugar era, we would have had all these different riots and so. But Workers' Week, celebrated in May, is symbolic of that kind of upheaval, that kind of unsettled disposition of workers that have now led to the minimum standards that we have today in our labor laws.
Okay.
So many persons may not know, but out of those riots came the Moyne Commission, where there was an investigation into what was causing all of this unrest, upheaval,
Right.
what were the things that needed to happen. And one of the things that was suggested is the establishment of the Labor Department, the establishment of minimum standards. So we have even a minimum wage that came
that's what it's
about as a
connected to.
result, right, the Minimum Wage Act
Right.
and resultant orders.
Okay.
So Workers' Week is that week that we stop to reflect on where we're coming from, where we are, and where we're going as labor. Where is the labor market going?
So what's behind this year's theme? Recognizing abilities, fostering greater inclusion of our workers.
So Jamaica has done tremendously well in respect of the labor market.
All right.
We are 4.2% unemployment. That is a historic.
We're talking out of 100.
Out of 100, right? And that is very historic. What we recognize is that the average Jamaican person who is looking for a job
Right.
may easily find a job in Jamaica today. And we want to say thank you to the employers. We want to say thank you to the workers. We want to say to the job seekers, we are ready to help you. Now, as we look at the whole issue of Workers' Week, we have to really look at what it is that needs to be done for not just the current workers, but persons with disabilities. We also, and I mentioned that we are at record low levels of unemployment,
Right.
because there are some persons that by age, they may have retired, but it doesn't mean that they haven't retired in the sense that they're ready to join other spaces for economic reasons,
Yes.
to give their skills to other sectors. So we know that there are persons who retired as teachers. They may want to re-enter the classroom
Yeah.
in different ways.
Wow.
To give to special education as shadows, even for persons, children with disabilities.
Right.
So we're encouraging persons to just reflect, to understand that there is always scope to enter, and we want to recognize that employers will have to look a little bit more closer at making access to persons with disabilities possible. We do know that with COVID we learned a lot, and persons with disabilities have become involved in work from home, and it has been very encouraging.
Right.
But this Labor Day and Workers' Week leading into Labor Day, we're ramping up the access, as we say.
Ramping up the access.
Right. For elderly persons, the senior citizens, persons with vulnerabilities, and persons with disabilities.
Understood.
So Workers' Week, we are recognizing the abilities.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So what are some of the activities that will mark Workers' Week? Can you just like give me top 2?
Oh, top 2. All right. So we are going out to the communities.
All right. Yeah.
And we have already gone out to the community of Frome in Westmoreland, because that's where the sugar riot started.
The history.
Exactly. And we reminded the young persons. We had lots of schools that came, and we had lots of persons from the communities in and around Frome that came out. They were able to get access to all the social services, the pass, the social pension, our partners that came with us, the health services.
So it's a pretty big draw.
Pretty big draw.
Okay.
So that happened in Frome.
Right.
And if you didn't get a chance to go to Frome, you have another chance to be at the Emancipation Park on the 22nd of May. And that's Wednesday. We start at 10 o'clock and we go up until 3 o'clock.
Right.
Persons with disabilities will be happy to know that the JUTC is partnering with us, and that they will be able to get transportation that takes them straight to the Emancipation Park.
That's wonderful.
Persons who are senior citizens, it is the place to be. May 22nd, come and hang with us. Emancipation Park, because it's a one-stop shop. We have partners in the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, the RGD, just about any kind of social service. So we're ramping up the access to education opportunities with the Heart Trust NSTA. We're ramping up the opportunities in terms of the financial access, because we will have a few of those financial houses as well. We're ramping up the access in terms of the social services. And definitely, I cannot leave that we're ramping up the access in terms of employment services. Wow. So persons will be interviewed on spot, and persons with disabilities, we will have sign language experts and so to help with those interviews. So we are ensuring that we're fostering greater inclusion of our workers.
So ramping up the access, ramping up the buy-in, hoping that everybody comes on out. You cannot miss, apparently, what's going to be happening on the 22nd.
22nd.
At Emancipation Park. Now, we do hope our viewers are much clearer and in tune with what's happening with this Workers' Week. You got the history, you got the present, but don't go anywhere. Next, we'll be talking about the upcoming Labor Day activities, so please, stay tuned.
This Labor Day, May 23, let's ramp up the access, show that you care. Help to build ramps enabling access for those with disabilities, the elderly and other vulnerable Jamaicans. Support your community schools, health centers and shelters. We're not just building ramps, we're building up inclusion, empathy and support. We're building a better Jamaica. Labor Day 2024 for persons with disabilities, the elderly and the vulnerable. Ramp up the access, show that you care.
Earlier we talked about Workers' Week and its historical significance, particularly the connection to our modern labor laws. Now we'll be talking about Labor Day, because it too is a realization of our struggles and labor movements of which we've marked our errors and strived for better working conditions. We're continuing the conversation with Divisional Director of Industrial Relations and Allied Services in the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, Gillian Corodos. So, Lady Corodos, this year's theme is persons with disabilities, the elderly and the vulnerable, and you said it in the first half, ramp up the access, show that you care. Now, I have to put an unenviable question at you. Labor Day is a holiday. You know, we as Jamaicans would like to stay home or go out, have fun. So, on Labor Day, why should I not go to the beach or just stay home and sleep?
You know, I knew you would ask me that question. And a lot of persons are thinking the same thing.
Right.
But I'm going to start with a segment of the slogan.
Okay.
Show that you care.
Oh.
So it's a personal thing. And we have to recognize that as a country, we have a responsibility to our brother and our sisters. And therefore, we're asking persons to show your care, to help us to ramp up the physical access and the access, not just physical, but in terms of all access for persons with disabilities, the elderly, senior citizens, and the vulnerable.
Yeah, sorry to break it, but I have to ask, the ramp up, is it literal? We're building ramps, installing ramps?
I was just about to tell you. So we're literally building a ramp.
Great.
And that will happen on Labor Day at the Institute of Jamaica for the encouragement of literature, science, and art.
That's the national project.
And you might wonder why I know it so well, because I used to work there.
Oh.
So we want to recognize the Institute of Jamaica and the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment, and Sport that is leading that exercise.
Okay.
And it is really to provide physical access so that persons can have access to Jamaica's national treasures, the museums. Wouldn't you want your grandmother, your relative with a disability to have ease of access, to enjoy all that is there at the Institute of Jamaica? So it is very symbolic that this year we are literally taking the oldest cultural institution in the Western Hemisphere.
Yes.
And ramping up the physical access. But we will be ramping up the access, as you already asked me, in different ways, because as we go on past Labor Day, we're encouraging employers, just civil society, to just do their part. So on Labor Day, that's when you really start ramping up the access. You really are going to come out. I know people want to go to the beach, but you know what? The beach will always be there. So we want you to come out, and it's at 10 to 16 East Street in downtown Kingston.
Right.
There's ample parking. We're all going to be there. If you're not there, I'm sure you're going to be somewhere else across the island, ramping up the access in some other space, creating an opportunity in your community, at your church, at whatever is your organization or community project, or national, or the parish level projects that you choose to participate in.
And just to underline,
yes.
the location you gave us, that is the location of our national project.
So the national project
yes.
is the Institute of Jamaica, 10 to 16 East Street. It's downtown Kingston.
Right.
And there's going to be ample parking. There's always enough work for all of us to do. So don't worry and say, oh, your neighbor is going, so you don't need to come. We need you as well. Remember, show you care. That's part of the theme.
All hands on deck. You know, I found it interesting while you were describing how showing that we care, and especially the access to the national treasures, there's also an element of this of building equity for the future. I will be old one day.
That's correct. And you know, what is so significant is that so many of our young persons spend their time on the social media, but their devices. And it is very important for us to protect elements of this history, so that they are able to go at their leisure and to see the physical history. And it is a place that I call the best kept secret, in the sense that there's so much that the Institute of Jamaica has. And even its flora and fauna, they have a fantastic science museum. And I do know that a lot of the primary prep schools, preschools go to visit. But I am sure that a lot more high schools and community groups will be visiting to see this fantastic science museum.
Right.
There's also so it's called the Natural History Museum, but we call it loosely the Science Museum.
Okay.
There's the National Museums of Jamaica,
Right.
and that is where you can go and see many of the artifacts in its collection. There's a Jamaica Music Museum. Did you know that, Theodore?
I did.
That's right. So that is all part of the Institute of Jamaica. There is a National Gallery where you have the fine arts.
Yes.
And there's the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank. And there they do oral history recordings. So you can find all of this, listen to some of the stories
Wow.
that
Wow.
persons would have told. So we want to ramp up the access to the museums, and that is being done through the national project this year.
I
And
like that.
Come out.
Yes.
I am telling you, it is going to be better than
This is
a
your
beach
this is
would
your
offer.
final word.
That's
yes.
my final word. It's going to be better than a beach would offer because you're preserving Jamaica's rich cultural history.
All right. We are ramping up the access. We're remembering the struggles that have brought us to the minimum standards of labor that we all benefit today. And we're highlighting Labor Day, ramping up the access. And as Lady Corodos mentioned, it's about showing that we care.
That you care.
That you care. Now put yourself in it. Personalize it. Yes.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us. This has been Get the Facts, and I do hope you have a productive week, just getting ready for a productive day on Labor Day. See you next time.